Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Wildcard Wednesday. My name is Ben Pulowski. I'm part of Geotab's Learning Center. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Our topic for today is managing your fleet with vehicle sensor data. So in just a moment, we're going to be getting into some of the different data that we're able to pull from vehicles, some of the engine diagnostics and fault codes and other information, and how you can use some of this maybe lesser access data to help manage your fleet most effectively. All right, all of that having been said, I am joined today by Laurie Sehl. She is one of our partner account managers, and with that, I am going to pass it over to her. Laurie, welcome to Wildcard Wednesday. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much, Ben. This is my inaugural Wildcard Wednesdays. I'm really excited to be here to talk about vehicle sensor data. And just a little bit of background on myself. I've worked in the fleet management industry for about, well, longer than I care to actually say. And I used to sell Geotab in my old role, and then started working at Geotab a couple of years ago. And when I came to Geotab, I knew how good it was, but when I started working here, I was quite amazed at all that the system could do, and really realized that they've created a gold standard on reporting and dashboards, and the flexibility that they have available in the system is really quite amazing. So for those of you who are new to Geotab, I would encourage you to, once you get comfortable with what you've already got, start thinking outside the box and using some of these tools with your reseller, because there's some really fun things that you can do with the data, and it is a great tool. What I wanted to do is talk to you a little bit about some of the things that are what I found surprising, which were parts of MyGeotab that weren't used very much. And I had my own suspicions on the vehicle sensor data and DTC codes, because, coming from fleet management world, that's really great information, but I was curious to know why it wasn't really used that much. But I wanted to verify with the rest of the people at Geotab, what they thought. What were some of the underutilized features of MyGeotab? So I went out to the team, and honestly, the little guy on the left, that's what they looked like to me when I first started here. I'm definitely one of the older ones at Geotab, but I did go out to the field and I asked them, so, if you were to pick one thing that was really not utilized enough or misunderstood and not really showcased well enough by us, what would you say? And basically what came back to me was my suspicions were validated. Vehicle diagnostics and sensor data was probably the biggest one. But I thought it was really interesting too to see some of the other responses that came back from our people in support, in sales, anybody dealing with the end user and the resellers. And they had a few other pieces of feedback that I thought might be valid just to touch on while we're here. One of the things that really I think is underutilized, and it was a big number here, it was 14, almost 15%, was the getting started and help feature of MyGeotab. So within MyGeotab, on the top left side of the page, there's a section called Getting Started and Help. And within there is the complete product guide to Geotab. And a lot of times you just want a quick answer. All you have to do is Control F and look for a word, and it'll take you right to that section. And also, a lot of times I get questions. I need to know what's going on, what's new, what's exciting in Geotab. It's all here in the What's New section. And all you have to do is click on it, and there you go. What's the latest and greatest in MyGeotab? The other thing that I wanted to point out while we're in here is our blog posts. Each of us at Geotab have to do a blog once a year, and you get some really creative ideas coming through that blog, and a lot of topics are covered that you might have questions. So again, click on the blogs and do a search feature. And forums is another great way to get questions and answers taken care of. And finally, resources. And Geotab, you may already know, has their own YouTube channel, and there's playlists within that YouTube channel. So if you want a topic covered and you want certain features taken care of, or you want a nice summary of everything, you can just sit and listen to YouTubes for a little while and get caught up. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. And the other part that was underutilized, or at least our people thought, I'm sure it's utilized, but maybe not to its fullest extent. And so what you want to be aware of, and make sure your resellers are working with you on this, that you can customize dashboards You don't have to look at just defaults. You can customize them to what best suits your needs and, the best quick summary that really works for you and what you're focused on today. So don't forget to take advantage of that customization feature in the dashboard section. And there's a few other things that we know that you're aware of, but make sure you take full advantage. The rules engine, it's a fabulous feature. Also, the zones and routing, zones in particular is a great way to measure drive time versus customer time. And the groups, can't say enough about the flexibility within groups. So talk to your Geotab reseller if you want to learn more about that. Some of the comments, though, back to the diagnostics from our internal folks were this. We don't really see a huge use of fault codes or PM reporting. We need to really, we think, help the end users with more reports and dashboards so they get full usage out of it. We also said a fuel is an amazing feature, but unfortunately, it doesn't really get a lot of airtime only because we don't get fuel fill-ups on every single vehicle. So then the perception is that it's not useful, but take what it gives you because it is really good. And finally, one of our solutions engineers said it's really crucial to helping you lower your total cost of ownership, and it's really largely ignored in Geotab. So that's why we're here today, is see if we can figure this one out together. And certainly we welcome your comments and feedback. Concerns about the vehicle sensor data by our resellers primarily are there is just too many fault codes. It's almost too much. It's confusing. We don't really get all the codes for all the vehicles. It's not consistent from manufacturer to manufacturer. We're not sure which codes are crucial, which aren't. We don't have the time to actually sit down and figure it out. And, we're not mechanics, so why bother? All valid feedback. So let's talk about this beautiful goldmine of information and how we might be able to take advantage of it. We're going to look and understand and articulate the value of this. We're going to introduce some new reports. We're going to show you the value and share some ideas with you on how to get started. And then get your feedback at the end. If you've got ideas that you want to share with us, we'd love to hear them. So I'm sure you all know this, but if you can use the sensor data, anything coming in from the engine port, and when I say sensor data, I'm not talking just about engine codes like the check engine light. I'm talking about measurements, coolant level, oil temperature, anything that we can pull out of that dashboard that's sitting in front of you as a driver. We're going to see if we can report on it and make it useful for you. And when we do that, you can reduce your costs of the fleet by reducing your maintenance costs. And of course, if you're not in the shop and not as much, you're going to be reducing your downtime. You're going to have a safer vehicle because it's not going to fail on the side of the road. Another really important thing here is that you can make some really great buying and selling decisions if you know more about what's going on with your vehicle from the inside out. For example, you're going to be able to sell a vehicle. If you can get a really good handle on this stuff, you can sell the vehicle before it shows signs of big problems. So, keeping an eye on those trends. You could even predict component failure, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then you can take some proactive measurements on avoiding these failures. I went out to the super users. There are customers out there that really they love this data. And I was offered the opportunity to interview some of these, and I thought it would be great information to bring in. So I actually went and interviewed super users, automotive engineers, solutions engineers, resellers to get their feedback. So hopefully my simplistic view here of how things work will help you, because it's very complicated at times to pull it all together. One super user mentioned to me that they avoided 12 engine failures in 1 year. And off to the right there, you'll see how much they saved versus how much preventative maintenance they put into it. They said their mechanics review this information daily. We have a client or a super user that actually has worked with Geotab to predict battery failure within, I want to say 99.5%, but I think it's even higher, and looks at the battery failure from, is it a low chance to a medium to a high chance of battery failure, and they've turned that into a great tool where they actually get that battery replaced before it fails, so it really reduces much of their downtime. The history itself and knowledge helps to improve the analysis that they do on their fleet, they monitor post-repair effectiveness. And I thought this was really interesting. Post-repair effectiveness means this. If I'm monitoring my repairs on the code level, and then I have a breakdown, and then I look at those codes after the breakdown, and I see that those codes have gone away, but 2 weeks later, those codes pop up again. That tells me a story about what happened with that repair, was it effective or not, and can I go back to my garage and get them to repair it properly this time. And even post-warranty claims might have some ammunition here if you went back and showed certain fault codes that are showing up, even when they come off, the vehicle comes off the line. There might be a case here to help you support, warranty claims that showed up after the 36 months or whatever your warranty is. So I thought it would be important to help you understand a little bit more about engine sensor data and how we get it, because it really helped me understand how complex it is, but also, how to value this data and be careful with it in terms of, making sure that you're not putting all your eggs in this basket, because it's very complicated, but at the same time, you can use it. You just have to be careful. So there's two things that happen here. There are engine sensor and DTC codes that are broadcast to us from the engine. We don't have to do anything. It just gets sent through the engine port into MyGeotab, and we do some great things with that information. We can put words to it, we can bucket it, and we'll go into that. There's also information in the engine that's not broadcast, but it is available for us to go get. And so a lot of what we do as an engineering firm is we go and reverse engineer some of the proprietary codes that are sitting there available to extract from the engine port and to turn into great information. So that could be seatbelt, for example. You'll hear the term hide the seatbelt when we talk at Geotab, and that is because every model year, almost every model year, the pins and the information coming through the pins change, and we have to turn around and figure out where it's coming from, so that we can offer our clients some relatively good information on seatbelt. It gave me, and I hope it gives you, a perspective on, there's a lot of information out there. It's just, it is not consistent from one manufacturer to the other, so it gets quite complicated. And so that sort of takes us to, well, okay, great, now what do we do? Well, what we have done so far with some of this data that we actually get broadcast to it is we actually normalize it so that we're looking consistently at the same information across manufacturers. We bucket it into certain areas, and then we offer filter features on the engine health, on emissions, on fuel consumption, and also the telematics device itself has fault codes that come through. And don't ignore telematics device systems, because the one thing that we want to make sure as a group we all do is make sure that the device is calibrated. That's 1/3 of the value that you get out of Geotab. It's rare that it happens, but once in a while, there's no calibration on the device. So you want to work with your resellers to get that fixed up. What do the super users say though? Because I went to them, I said, okay guys, you've got a system all wrapped around this now, and it's much easier for you, but what did you start with? How could I tell the users out there to really stop and take a look at this information and see if you can start using it? And they said, firstly, you got to work with a mechanic. You're not a mechanic yourself. There is no consistency or very little between manufacturers. So you have to work with the mechanic that understands your fleet and that can work with these codes, because they're plugging into the ECM themselves looking for diagnostics. But what a wonderful opportunity to get your mechanic involved and work with them to create a report or a dashboard that says, here's some things, let's focus on this. Based on my history with you, Mr. Client, I've realized, or we've realized together, that we have a lot of engine failures. So let's look at that and go from there. Also, you want to understand, they said, what your total cost of that repair is that you're trying to circumvent. If it's not a big deal, then why bother putting the effort into figuring it out? So really, you've got to look at the cost of the repair that you're trying to circumvent, the amount of downtime that you're going to have, how much it's going to cost you, parts and labor, and then what is it going to cost to prevent that repair? So it might be $1,000 repair, but it's going to cost you $500 in preventative maintenance to really reduce the odds of that happening, is that worthwhile to us? So those are the things you want to talk about, but then you've got a really great concept of where do we go from here? And what our super users are saying is keep it simple. Start with one make, model, and model year, because then you've got a consistent set of data that's going to be coming through. Review the past repairs and the data that had come with those past repairs. So let's say you had an engine failure back in March the 7th. What data was being broadcast or retrieved by MyGeotab with respect to engine failures right before that repair, and what happened after the repair? And now you've got a huge amount of information to go forward with, and then you can maybe even group a bunch of vehicles in that section and start looking at them as a group and saying, look at what we're seeing for these other vehicles similar to this vehicle. What can we do to avoid this repair going forward, and work with your mechanic on that? So you're going to link the repairs to the impact of the DTC codes, track the patterns associated with those repairs. As I said, create targeted exception reports and dashboards to help you manage those repairs, and then get ahead of them with this kind of information. There's some really good tidbits that I picked up on the way from the super users and the engineers. So I thought I'd share them with everybody. Some of the things that they recommended and what they take a look at are transmission fluid information coming from MyGeotab, coolant level or coolant temperature as well. The percent of oil life remaining, that's an obvious one, but not all that information comes through the manufacturers. So you got to be careful. You don't rely on it because it doesn't always come through every single vehicle, but it will be consistent by make and model. So knowing that, use it as accordingly. Oil temperature was another interesting one. Someone said to me, well, when the oil light comes on, it's too late. But what I do is I watch oil temperature, because when the oil temperature goes up, that means oil level is going down. Fuel level is an obvious one for safety reasons, but also if you're constantly traveling on low fuel, you could be impacting the system because you're getting some of the residue at the bottom of the tank. And as I said earlier, battery voltage is a great one, and more to come from Geotab on that. The other things that they said to monitor in terms of fault codes were the generic overheating fault code, the check engine light, which is one I think everybody knows about. The one thing about check engine light is you don't just get check engine light for the vehicles that we get it from. When you start digging into the reports, you can see the date and time stamp of that check engine light, and you can also see some of the other codes that are associated with that check engine light, so that you can make a really good assessment with your mechanic's advice on whether this is urgent or not. So, do we take it off the road right now, or do we let it go and then just plan accordingly? Low priority light, high volume, hard codes, pending codes, OEM recommendations. So even if you're dealing with your OEM, maybe they could give you a fault code to watch for or to keep an eye on. Even if we haven't named it, the codes are in there. And if we don't get it, you can always put in a feature request through MyGeotab and through your reseller, and we'll see if we can put it on the list. If it's an important one that we can all benefit from, then let's do it. Another little bit of information I thought might be useful for everybody to know about, which you may already know about, but for what it's worth, the check engine light, if it goes on, it may be really low impact from a downtime perspective, but I was told that immediately your fuel efficiency decreases up to 40%. And so even if it's on, you're still in problems because the whole algorithm associated with the engine changes. So there may be nothing really significant wrong, but there is a big impact to your fuel. Tire pressure is another great one. If you can get it off the ECM, if we can get it for you, to keep an eye on that, because tire pressure can impact your fuel consumption. The O2 sensor has a really big impact on your fuel consumption. So take a look at that. And low engine temperature, obviously in the cold weather, it's going to impact your fuel consumption. I wanted to give you some insights on some of the reports that we have pulled together, just as, under the radar reports, doing things here and there to help out clients or resellers. if we create these reports, they're definitely fair game for everybody. The trick is here, and our solutions engineers do a lot of this, they've created it, well, they maybe created it a year ago or so, or they haven't tested it recently. So we're making this available to the resellers only, and then they can fine tune it according to your needs. But at the same time, we felt that it was too good to keep hidden. It was like gold in them there hills when I started asking for reports that they had created. So this is what we're going to be showing you, but I also wanted to bring to your attention some of the reports that they created are now available in the marketplace, and they're free. And we're always adding to them, so keep an eye out on that. And in the presentation, we've put some links in here to the marketplace so you can download them and then have them as a regular feature for you to take advantage of. There's a few here that, again, you've got to be careful because we don't get all of this information from every single manufacturer or the make and model. But heck, if your fleet's full of these kinds of vehicles, let's take advantage of it. Look at this, a simple report, which is in one of the blog posts by Jordan. It's fantastic, and it gives you a great look at where you might have a problem, and you can get ahead of it. Top faults, and this is one that one of our engineers created that filters out the diagnostics from the device, from the telematics device, because it gets kind of noisy. You filter out those pieces of information, you're going to get a really good view of vehicles that are really spewing out quite a bit of information to us, and that's got to be a sign of a bit of a problem. And it's nice to see what the high top number of faults are by type of fault code too, so you can work with the mechanic or get working on a strategy around some of these faults. This is a cool one. This is a report that basically is the guts of some of these dashboards that you saw, but it also has included a link on the far right side that if you don't know what the code is, for example here, P0135, you can click on the link and it takes you to a public website where it actually tells you what that P0135 means. And maybe you can take some action. Again, another great way to get further insight into your fleet. It just takes fleet management to a whole new level. Here's another one with fuel used while the power takeoff was engaged. So a lot of fleets out there rely on the idle time of the vehicle to power something that's attached to the vehicle. And how much is that costing them in fuel to actually power that thing? Is there idle time outside the power takeoff that we need to address? So there's really good information in some of these reports. The other thing that I wanted to make sure we highlighted, and I'm sure there's more beyond these ones, but some of the marketplace partners that have actually created applications that allow you to use their know-how and diagnose some of these problems. And I want to be fair, most of these are for heavy-duty trucks. And the trick with light-duty vehicles is that the codes aren't as consistent as they are on the heavy-duty trucks coming out of the J1939. So that makes it much easier for these companies to create a solution around it. But if you have heavy-duty trucks, there's some great things to take advantage of in our marketplace. And there's also marketplace partners that actually create maintenance management tools around our software. So another great thing to know about and take advantage of if you'd like to. So in summary, we just want to make sure you understand, keep it simple. Start simple with one make and model year, and encourage your mechanic to help you out. Take advantage of some of our report ideas that we've given to you, but the sky's the limit, honestly. But just remember, it's not going to be consistent from model year to model year or from make to make, but you can get good information out of it. Get creative and be brave. I think everybody's a little afraid of these codes. I'm hoping we gave you some ideas on how to get started on it. And reach out to your reseller, and if they're having questions, they can reach out to Geotab for assistance, and we'll help you get moving forward. And just at the bottom of this whole seminar, I put links in here to some of the great webinars associated with the engine diagnostics. So you feel free to play around and click on these links. It'll take you right out to the YouTube channel. And finally, there's been great blog posts by the geniuses back here at Geotab on the diagnostics as well that are really good reading. And that's it. I think I'll open it up with Ben's help for some questions.
Sure, thanks, Laurie. Today's webinar ended up being unintentionally a very appropriate bookend with our last webinar, which was a few weeks ago. We had Kurt Ford, our heavy truck experience manager. He was talking about taking action on engine fault codes and really getting into the weeds on these engine fault codes and what they mean. So there is a link to that in the presentation that I just sent out to everyone. And then that is also available on our YouTube channel, so feel free to check that out. Laurie, in your experience, how does this contribute to the cost of ownership? Is there any sort of data on, what sort of savings you're looking at by focusing on maintenance and these engine fault codes?
Yeah, I can't really comment. I couldn't give you a percentage for sure because it really depends on how much effort goes into this. I mean, it was no secret that there's good information here. It's how much time and effort do you have to get to take advantage of it. And that's where, we've created these reports. That's why we're starting to look at this and saying, how can we help everybody out here? So education is one thing, but the people who have embraced it, they actually rely on this. Their mechanics rely on the system. So that tells me that there's a lot of good value in here. It's just a matter of harnessing it and then acting on it. So you saw earlier in the presentation where one company avoided 12 engine failures. And that's where I thought it was a great example of how much money you could save, if you took advantage of some of this.
And we also have a report. This is a free report in our marketplace, which is the Fleet Savings Summary Report. So for those of you who are interested in being able to quantify some of this data, that's a good one to check out. Again, that's the Fleet Savings Summary Report in the Geotab marketplace. Laurie, to your knowledge, is there a list that explains what these engine faults and telematics faults mean?
There is website in that report that we showed you. There are websites that will diagnose or translate the codes in the report, so you just have to click on it. But also, it's important to know that Geotab does a lot of that translation for you too. However, I can't stress enough, it's best to save you time. Work with a mechanic, a trusted mechanic, that you can work on a strategy. It's progress. You have to start with small and then evolve from there.
There is another report in our marketplace. It focuses on telematics faults rather than engine faults. The telematics device issue detection report, something like that it's called. But that does go over all of the telematics faults and shows you what they mean and what action you can take to address them. We did have a question on the Fleet Savings Summary Report. Can the units be changed to kilometers and liters from miles and gallons? We should be able to do that. You'd probably want to reach out to your reseller, your account manager, or whoever it is that you typically contact for support, and we should be able to do that for you.
I think the thing to know about that report too is it gives you direction. It's been put together by engineers. We looked at statistics. The dollars themselves are important, but also don't rely on the dollars themselves. Look at the opportunity that you have and then focus on that opportunity.
Yeah, that's a great point. Whether you're saving $800 a month or $1,000 a month isn't really what's important. What's more so important is that you're moving in the right direction and that you are taking actions that can help your fleet to save money. So with that, I will say thank you all so much for attending today's webinar. Laurie, thank you so much for joining us today on Wildcard Wednesday and presenting.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you next time on Wildcard Wednesday.